On a quiet tree-lined road named Adams Street, there lived a family. Like many families, they had hopes, they had dreams, and they had two sons. The older brother was named Cain. He was a man of the earth, his hands calloused from hard work. He ran the family's organic farm, a business he had built from the ground up with sweat and determination. Cain's days began before the sun. The cold morning air was his constant companion as he walked the fields. He checked the irrigation lines, his boots sinking into the dark, rich soil he had cultivated for years. He managed the farm's finances, negotiated with buyers, and oversaw a small team of workers. It was a heavy burden, a relentless cycle of planting, tending, and harvesting. His younger brother was Abel. Abel was different. He was a creator, an artist. His world was one of color, of light, and of feeling. He didn't work the land with his hands. Instead, he captured its beauty on canvas. Abel's days followed a different rhythm. He would wake with an idea, a vision of color and form. His studio was a sanctuary, filled with the scent of oil paints and turpentine. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating canvases that held entire worlds. He worked with a quiet intensity, lost in his craft for hours. His success felt effortless to those on the outside. The brothers lived under the same roof, but they walked in different worlds. Cain was reserved, thoughtful, and pragmatic. He spoke when he had something important to say, his words chosen with care. Abel, on the other hand, was charming and expressive. He could light up a room with his stories and his easy laugh. There was a day that stood out, a day that drew a sharp line in the sand. The family was celebrating their father's birthday. Cain had spent weeks preparing his gift. He had curated a magnificent harvest box. It was filled with the very best of his farm. He presented it with a quiet sense of pride, a testament to a year of labor. Then, it was Abel's turn. He unveiled a portrait he had painted of their father. It was more than just a likeness. It captured a look in his eyes, a hint of a smile, a lifetime of wisdom and kindness. The room fell silent. There were gasps of awe. Abel had not just painted a face, he had painted a soul. Their father was moved to tears. He stood up and embraced Abel, holding him for a long moment.
"This," he said, his voice thick with emotion for all to hear, "is the greatest gift a son could ever give. You have truly been blessed, my boy."
Cain stood by the table, his own gift suddenly feeling plain and worthless. The vibrant colors of his vegetables seemed to fade under the fluorescent lights of the kitchen. The rest of the evening was a blur for the older brother. He watched as guests crowded around the painting, their voices a chorus of praise for Abel. In the weeks that followed, a quiet chill settled between the two brothers. The easy banter they once shared disappeared, replaced by a tense and heavy silence. Cain would retreat further into his work, his days growing longer, his face set like stone. He felt a growing bitterness, a poison seeping into his thoughts. He would see Abel in his studio, music playing softly, and feel a surge of anger. Why was his brother's path so easy, so celebrated? Why was his own path of sweat and sacrifice so easily overlooked? The questions echoed in his mind, unanswered. One afternoon, Cain found a magazine on the coffee table. It was a local arts journal, and on the cover was a feature on Abel. "The Prodigy of Adams Street," the headline read. Cain stared at the magazine, his hands clenched into fists. He saw his brother's smiling face, celebrated and admired, and in that moment, the quiet resentment that had been simmering within him began to boil. The next morning the air was heavy with unspoken words. Cain approached Abel. His voice was unusually calm, almost gentle. "Come with me," he said. "There's something I want to show you out in the West Field. The light is perfect right now." Abel, relieved by the offer of connection, agreed immediately. He hoped this was a chance to talk, to finally clear the air. He grabbed his sketchbook, thinking his brother wanted to show him a view he could capture, an offering of peace. They walked together, the silence between them feeling different now, not tense, but expectant. They reached the far edge of the property, a secluded field bordered by a dense line of trees. The morning mist still clung to the grass and the world seemed hushed and still. There was nothing special there, no spectacular view, no new crop to inspect. Abel turned to his brother, a question in his eyes. "What did you want to show me?" he asked, his voice soft. Cain didn't answer right away, he just looked at his brother. And in his eyes Abel saw something he had never seen before, a profound sadness, a terrifying emptiness.
"Why is it so easy for you?" Cain's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of 1,000 silent frustrations. "Why does everyone see you, but they walk right past me?"
The words hung in the air, raw and painful. Abel was stunned. his heart aching for his brother's hurt. "Cain, that's not true," he began, reaching out a hand. "I see you, I've always—"
But Cain flinched away from his touch. The jealousy, nurtured for so long in the darkness of his heart, had finally grown into a monstrous thing. It twisted his love into rage. It silenced the voice of reason. In that terrible moment, Cain made a choice. A choice born of pain and a feeling of profound injustice. He saw his brother not as the boy he grew up with, but as the source of all his suffering. The embodiment of his own failure. The field, once a place of life and growth, became a stage for a tragedy. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a finished story, the silence of a light extinguished. The aftermath was a landscape of grief. When Abel didn't return home, a search began. It was Cain who led them to the field. His face was a mask, unreadable. The discovery shattered their family, breaking it into a million pieces. The home on Adam Street, once filled with the scent of paint and the sounds of life, became a quiet, hollow place. It was haunted by the presence of one son and the deafening absence of the other. The father who had once beamed with such pride was now a broken man, aged by a sorrow too deep for words. The portrait Abel had painted now seemed to mock him from the wall. Cain was left to walk in the ruins of the world he had created. He was not arrested. There was no evidence, only the terrible knowledge that he carried within himself, but he was imprisoned all the same. He was trapped in a cell of his own making, with walls built of guilt and regret. Every corner of the house held a memory of his brother. Abel's empty studio, the canvases left unfinished, the brushes still resting in a jar. They were constant, silent accusers. He tried to go back to his work. He tried to find solace in the soil, in the familiar rhythms of the farm, but the earth felt different beneath his feet. It felt like a witness. This story, as ancient as the scriptures, is not just about two brothers who lived long ago. It is a mirror. It reflects a truth that lives within all of us. We have all felt the sting of being overlooked. We have all looked at someone else's life, their success, their talent, their happiness, and felt a pang of envy. The mark of Cain is often thought of as a curse, a sign of shame, but perhaps we can see it differently. Perhaps it is a symbol of our shared human brokenness. It is the mark of a conscience. It is the internal voice that asks us, "Where is your brother? Where is your sister?" It is the reminder that our actions have consequences, that our choices ripple outward and affect those around us. The question, "Where is your brother?" echoes through our modern world. We hear it in the divisions in our communities, in the arguments within our families, and in the quiet loneliness of our own hearts. Are we our brother's keeper? Are we responsible for the well-being of others? The story suggests that the answer is yes. We are all connected. The well-being of our neighbor, our colleague, our family member is tied to our own. Favoritism is a subtle poison. It rarely announces itself loudly. It lives in the small things, the extra praise given to one child, the assumptions made about another's strengths and weaknesses. Parents often do not mean to cause harm, but over time, these patterns create unseen wounds. They teach one child they are cherished for who they are, and the other that they are valued only for what they do. This story forces us to look at our own families, our own relationships. It asks us to consider the words we use and the attention we give. The story of Cain and Abel is a tragedy. There is no denying the darkness within it, but it does not have to be an ending. For us, it can be a beginning. It teaches us that while we cannot control the feelings of jealousy or anger that may rise within us, we have a choice. We can choose to feed the bitterness, to let it grow in the darkness until it consumes us, or we can choose to bring it into the light. This path begins with understanding. It begins with the courage to look at our own envy and ask where it comes from. What is the fear or insecurity that lies beneath it? Forgiveness is central to this journey. This includes forgiveness for others who may have hurt us, who may have shown favoritism or failed to see our worth. But just as importantly, it includes forgiveness for ourselves. Forgiveness for the envy we have felt, for the harsh words we have spoken, for the distance we have created. Forgiveness is not about forgetting what happened. It is about releasing the hold that the past has on us. Ultimately, this ancient story guides us toward a timeless truth. Compassion is the antidote to envy. Where favoritism creates division, compassion builds bridges. We are all walking on this earth together. We are all, in a sense, brothers and sisters. The story of Cain and Abel is not just a warning of what can happen when love fails, it is also an invitation. It is an invitation to be our brother's keeper, not out of obligation, but out of a deep and abiding understanding that in saving him, we also save ourselves.